Welcome to the Writing with Purpose podcast, inspiring journalists, writers, readers and nature lovers to embrace creativity and nature connection for positive well-being. I'm your host, Anna Williscroft. Join me for honest conversations with people who use writing, journaling and time in nature to find clarity, process life's experiences and live a more fulfilling life. Whether you're a seasoned writer, a curious beginner, or simply someone seeking a deeper connection to life, this podcast is for you. It's wonderful to have you here today. In today's episode, I'm joined by Elisa Friedlander, a psychotherapist and writing workshop facilitator who has spent her life exploring what writing can do for us when we're in pain. Elisa brings her own honest, hard-won experience to everything she shares, and this conversation is both raw and humorous at the same time. In this episode, I'm joined by Elisa Friedlander, licensed psychotherapist and writing workshop facilitator. Elisa helps people transform their relationship with chronic pain and illness through the written word. Her own journey with chronic pain has shaped her unique approach to therapeutic writing, and one that embraces both vulnerability, humour, pain, and hope. So, from her dream journal ritual to writing submerged in her bathtub, Elisa brings authenticity and creativity to everything she does. Her work has been published in HuffPost, Word Gathering, a journal of disability poetry and literature, and Mighty, amongst others. And they reach thousands who live with chronic conditions. Elisa is on the faculty of the Therapeutic Writing Institute and teaches an 8-week version of her Pain Meets Pen course. Also, a fun music journaling course, and is currently writing a book to help others navigate life with chronic pain. Today, we'll explore how writing becomes medicine, how humour and pain can coexist, and why putting pen to paper might be one of the most powerful acts of self-care available to us. Welcome, Elisa.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for caring about this topic.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah.
We're going to have a great conversation and I'm looking forward to getting stuck in. So we've got some quick fire round questions for you to begin with. So what was the last book that you read and how did it speak to your experience of living with chronic pain or disability or your approach to writing?
Well, I just finished a fiction book called The Correspondent by Virginia Evans, I believe. I hope I have that right. Virginia Evans. And it was so delightful. So the synopsis is it's about a woman in her 70s, and she spends every single morning, sits down at her desk and writes letters. So she writes letters to family, to friends, and she writes to famous authors to say, oh, I really loved your book. So she writes to Anne Patchett and Joan Didion and oh, if you want to write me back, that's fine. If not, and sometimes they do. And I won't give away the meat of it, but she has a trauma in her life. You come to realize she has a very significant trauma. And it's through the letter writing that she sort of comes to self-awareness and self-understanding. And so my very first, say, journal entry before I knew the word journal when we wrote in diaries when we were kids was a letter. And so that just really resonated with what I know to be the power of self-expression and self-understanding.
Yeah, it always
Delightful
amazes
book.
me. Yeah, it always amazes me, these different books that people read and how you come across them and, what you get from it, but also why you're drawn to it. Because, yeah, I mean, writing those letters is a big part of journal writing, isn't it? Expressive writing. And, we write those unsent letters. Maybe we sometimes
Right.
burn certain letters or, they're very
Right.
meaningful to us.
Yeah. And I mean, what I love about letter writing is that it's both such an intimate a way of being intimate with other people, but then we're also like journaling, we're having this intimate relationship with ourselves. And so through reading what we write, and there's so much self-discovery there. It's just
Yeah.
beautiful, and we learn in relationship to other people. And so yeah, I have boxes and boxes of letters from people. I should go through them sometime and learn from that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh,
also think as well, reading things from particularly, the further back we might go into history,
yeah.
the handwriting changes as well, and the language changes, and you can really see that evolve through letters. It's fascinating.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you look back and you look at the big like bubble letters or how you dot the I's and the slants or the straight up and we can see that different times in our lives even now. Like I had this revelation at one point that I write constantly. If I have something in my brain, it has to it has to come out
Mm.
in writing. I've just always been that way.
Have to
And I
channel it
noticed
out somehow.
got it. I've got too much for this brain to contain. So I noticed that when there was something I felt really uncomfortable with or embarrassed about or something ashamed about, some strong feeling, that the writing would be smaller or it would be lighter. I don't have the best handwriting to begin with, but it would become that much less legible. That is fascinating. And then there's this technique called illegible writing where you actually write and then write over what you've written so the intention is to not have to so other people and you don't have to really see it, but you're expressing, you're getting it out. You write and you write over it, you write over that. But that was a really interesting revelation for me.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that because that would be a solution for those people that want to journal but are very worried about somebody finding their journal and reading it. And a lot of us have that sort of experience from when we were younger. You mentioned the diary, of somebody potentially prizing that open and looking at it. What a great way to still be able to journal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Uh,
wouldn't be able to look back over it, of course, but in the moment, you're still getting that relief and you're still having that cathartic nest, and I just made up a word
right.
there, of being able to do that. Yeah,
Right, and it
fascinating.
could be an inroad into another piece of writing or just an invitation for people, like you said, who have had those Kay Adams calls them writing wounds. They're wounds. They're we've
Mhm.
been violated by people looking at our writing. So to enter into this relationship with the journal, I think of it as a capital J journal. It's this very sacred being, right? It's like any relationship, it requires trust. And has the journal earned that trust? And so any small way, seemingly small way we can find as an inroad to saying, okay, I see you. I've had a bad experience with folks like you, but I'm going to give it a try. And I want relationship and I want to trust. And so this is what I'm going to try. And then maybe a sentence or a paragraph and see how that sits.
Yeah,
But yeah, yeah, just as a way
yeah.
in.
Yeah, and as you grow with confidence, then you can expand and maybe not necessarily write over it 3 or 4 times, just once until you
Exactly.
get to the point where it's
Exactly.
the sentence, and then you can lean into that and read it back and
Yeah, it's
yeah.
like exposure therapy, which is exposing yourself little by little to what you're afraid of, right?
Mm,
And then so you look and go, "Oh, okay, well, nothing happened. I'm okay. I'm still here." Right? And that's proof and that's evidence gathering that I'm
mm.
okay and maybe I can expand on that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Well, we dived in straight away and people have already
Mm,
got 2 or 3
mm.
takeaway techniques there. So thank you very much for sharing that book and, allowing that conversation to
Yeah.
expand. So if we just come back to your childhood, do you have a
Mm.
favorite childhood book? And can you see how maybe some of those books from childhood shaped your understanding of resilience and hope over the years?
I mean, when you say resilience and hope, the Diary of Anne Frank is I mean, we could spend a day talking about that. But yes, so I was the only Jewish kid in my grade school. And so while I had good friends, I had Jewish affiliation, but as far as everyday best pal hanging around with folks, that was just me. And so when I picked up this book, I was still in grade school, and I have the tattered copy still. It's
Wow.
so it's so precious to me. I hold it a lot. I read her and yeah, I was nearly her age when it was. She was 13, I
Mm.
believe, 13 when she started writing. And I went, "Oh my god," as a kid, you go, "Oh, I like that too, I'm like that." And I said, "I see the world this way. I think the good in people, right? No matter what." And the horror and, the conditions under which she lived and her family and everybody at that time, Jewish and other folks under the regime. She just maintained this, I mean, the resilience and the hope and the goodness in herself and others. And I was so drawn to that. And it resonated. And I felt like I had and then I felt like I had a Jewish best friend, like, she got me, she knew me, and I started journaling when I was 6. At one point, I thought it was 8, but then I found six-year-old writings before I had a diary. Before I knew what a diary was, I just wrote on, loose leaf journal paper, loose leaf school paper, and, so that she would write. I didn't talk to anybody about the fact that I wrote in diaries, and so this relationship I had with her has been a lifelong and really, really
Yeah.
affecting.
Yeah. Have you read how many times have you read the book?
That's a good question. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. And then there's been new editions, and I've read those, but I always
Mm.
come back to my little childhood. I don't know. Wouldn't that have been
Yeah.
cool to log that?
Yeah, I can imagine that
Yeah.
you've read it quite a few times. It's interesting because I only listen well, I listened to it. I didn't read it. I listened to it on audio, but I only listened to it last year. You've had this relationship with that book and her really because of what she was going through. I thought it was fascinating. I was there with her. I was peeling the potatoes. I was
Yeah.
hiding. 'Cause I thought it was the way that she articulated what was going on and how she felt about certain things at such a tender age. I thought it was
I
great.
haven't done that yet. I haven't listened, so
Mm.
that's inspiring. Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
You do
So
that.
yeah. It was read by Helena Bonham Carter, the actress.
Mm, wow. Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen plays and movies and, so I've seen it enacted, but how interesting to because I think when we hear something versus when we read, the imagery can be quite different. I do both. I listen to audiobooks and I read a lot. So that's something I've noticed. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but for
I
myself.
think, I think
Yeah.
I think you're right there. I tend to now when I listen because I got to
Uh-huh.
the point where I used to listen to a lot of self-help books or
Uh-huh.
non-fiction in the car, and I always thought, "Oh, I need to stop and pull over so that I can make a note about that." So,
Yeah.
just before
Oh,
the end of the year, I decided I was only going to listen to fiction books as audio, and I would actually read something where I wanted to make notes. I have did, what's the word I'm looking for? I've already
just
gone away from that already, but I'm making sure that if
oh,
I do listen to something and I need to make notes, that it's in a time when I can sit down with my
yeah.
journal and I can make notes as I'm listening at the same time. So, but you're absolutely right. You do get two different experiences.
It's funny that you say that because just this year I realized that I would start to listen to a nonfiction because it's convenient. You're cleaning out your closet and
Yeah,
you're learning something. But how many times I picked up a nonfiction audiobook and then ended up buying the book because there were so many poignant points that I wanted to. So I gave that up and I do the same now. So now it's only fiction on audio.
yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, we don't actually we can't multitask anyway, can we? It's a lie. It's a myth.
No,
We can't
we
multitask.
think we can, but no, we cannot. No, it's a myth. You're right. I used to
So
pride myself on that, but no longer. Yeah.
yeah, no, we're with each other on that one. Great. So, Elisa, you keep a dream journal, which I'm fascinated
Yeah.
about because I keep a
Mm.
dream journal, and that's the
Oh,
main, I suppose, form of keeping a journal that I've kept to throughout the years from childhood. It's always been the one that I've gone back to before really getting into expressive writing. And I find it's a way to. I mean, I've always wanted to write fiction. So that was one of my main reasons for keeping a dream journal because of all the wacky stuff that we dream. But yeah, so What's the most surprising dream that you've had recently, and was there anything meaning there that you took from it?
Well, so I think so I'll be honest, I think that the idea of sharing a recent dream would feel a little too exposing because I like
Mm,
them to settle in. But what I'll share, which relates to my work facilitating writing groups for folks with chronic pain and illness, is a dream I had in the past, which is I was having actually a succession of them. And it was the overall theme was unsafety and fear. And
mm,
right. And so I've done a lot of dream study. I was in Jungian dream groups for years and just delved into it. I also started writing dreams very early on, similar to journaling without realizing it was a thing. It was something. There was some credibility to that. There
mm,
was some. It's really helpful for us. So it's been a lifelong practice. But so this dream series I had was what's going on. I don't feel unsafe. I'm safe at home. I'm safe in my what's going on. And so through journaling, maybe it was a week that I was having a few of these dreams. And I think of dreams as like a little gentle, even if it's a nightmare, a little gentle tap on the shoulder
yeah,
saying, "Wake up,
yeah.
sweetheart.
Hi.
Hi, honey. We need to look at this. Okay. I know you're sleeping." But what happened was through journaling, what came forth was that I was holding some fear about some progression in the spine disease that I have. That is a progressive condition because I don't tend to focus on, I don't ignore, but I don't focus on symptoms, right?
Mm, yeah.
So there's always this dance, right? The downside of having having all these skills and outlets and ways of coping and not over focusing on pain or whatever the symptoms happen to be is that sometimes we can move forward without processing what actually needs to get processed. So with these dreams, I realized that my body, my psyche was telling me that there were some symptoms I was having. They were subtle enough, but I know my body and I was aware that I was concerned. I was
Mm,
worried. And so then not long after that I had another MRI, which is pretty routine for me. And there was some significant progression. So the dream, it's not like it definitely wasn't a foreshadowing, but it was information that said, "Look, this is real. This is valid. How do you want to process this
mm,
and be with this?" And so, as soon as I journaled about that and started talking to that part of myself, because ultimately, what that meant is this fear part of me wanted to have voice.
yeah.
And I'm saying, and I've been in waking life, I'm saying, "It's okay, sweetie. It's okay, honey. You're good. You're self-regulated. You don't need to worry about that." Right? Great, great, great. Well, the other side of that is no, that voice
Mm.
really needed to come forth. So, and they stopped, the dreams stopped. It was like, boom.
Really? Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Completely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that suppression that you were going you
Yeah.
through that waking life was rising in the dreams, and as soon as you addressed
Exactly.
that and you wrote about it, it stopped. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
kept a dream journal.
Yes, yeah. I don't use it as well as I could use it. I write most mornings or wake up early hours and I
Mhm.
write about the dream. What I don't do, which I know I should do, tell me off here. So I don't sort of I don't reflect on it that much
Okay.
because I think maybe when I first started, it was always okay. Let's get these ideas down, and then
Mhm.
we'll work with what's come out and develop that into a story, rather than seeing it as that's part of me, an unconscious part of me that is trying to tell me something. So
Right.
I don't use it, I suppose, in the true way of journaling with your dreams.
I don't I mean, I think that's very valid. I think that that's a whole inroad to fiction writing and
Mm.
self-expression. I think it's, certainly helpful. I guess if it were me, I would wonder, like, that's interesting that I'm choosing this to write about, right? This dream or this aspect of the
Mm.
dream. And then even looking at what fiction you've created, and is there some unconscious process going on there that you are really actually doing what dream journaling is in your fiction writing and working through some of this stuff. So
Mm.
I'd say you've harvested it just in a more, maybe more creative way than I do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to put
Yeah.
it actually, to harvest it. We
Mhm.
harvest our writing in so many different ways, don't we? And
Yeah.
we have those doors that open, those inroads for us. Yeah, I not thought about it like that before. There is a lot of things that repeat. I usually pay attention to that. I'm a little bit more conscious of when things repeat a lot, such as
Yes.
needing to make a change. But then it's okay, well, what part of life am I being drawn to make that change? Because
Right.
I think sometimes when you have these strategies and these mechanisms for self-awareness, and you're kind of always working with those and helping to develop yourself in growth directions or nurturing direction, whatever that might be. Some There's so much going on, you just want to claw away from it, or I do sometimes anyway. And I was like, right, okay, I've written this down, I'll come back to it, but then I never come back to it. But there's a question there as to, well, why are you not coming back to it?
Right. Well, one, it sounds like you're doing a lot with it already. You're just placing an expectation that I should do it a certain way, and I think that that aligns with how people veer away from journaling or feel like they're failing and they're not doing it right because they're not doing it. And
Mm.
I know you've probably had these conversations about what people think are the guidelines to being a good journaler. Same with dream journaling, but I think that, I mean, there is absolute value in the a lot of value in the harvesting and reflecting, but I also think that something is happening. I mean, there's research on this, as you know, that something is happening when we go from
Mm.
our brains to, through our bodies, because writing is embodied, right? And it comes
Yeah.
out our fingers and onto the page, and there's some extraordinary, beautiful process happening there. So I don't think any of it is, you're not saying this, but none of it is wasted time, or none of it
Mm.
is not good enough. It's always goodness, I think.
Yeah.
And like you said, you can always go back to it, right? If you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always kept them. I've still got the books from when I was a teenager, and there's a couple of dreams in
Right.
particular that are still, very prominent from that period of time as well. But yeah, it's interesting because I always talk about the misconceptions of journaling, and that I've just actually voiced
Mm.
one that's my own. That I know. Thank you, Elisa.
Right.
I need to address that.
Yeah.
You see, it all comes out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So you mentioned there about your having to have MRI scans, and that was quite natural now for you as part of the, because you had some complicated spine surgeries, and everything changed at that point. You had the diagnosis of complete regional pain syndrome, which I'd actually never heard of until now. So can you share a little bit about what that diagnosis and other effects of those surgeries meant to you, not just physically, but in terms of your identity and the work you perhaps thought you were doing, and so how that leads on to what you do now, because you've got your workshops and that as well, which you love, which is your baby, your nurturing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for asking it. Yeah, so briefly I had experienced pain from very early adulthood, so pretty much all my life. I actually I'm not a morning person, quote unquote morning person to begin with, but I noticed that mornings, in my 20 years old, that young, I thought everybody woke up feeling pain and stiffness in the morning. I just thought that was normal. I didn't understand when people would say, "Oh, I'm a morning person." I thought they were like space aliens or
Yeah.
something. What do you mean you're a morning person? That mornings are hard, right? And so a lot of different interactions with medical folks throughout the years, and learned that I had It's an early onset degenerative disc disease. So we all have it when we hit our, 40s, 50s. Everybody's disc degenerates, but not supposed to happen when you're just out of your adolescence, right? And so managed with chronic pain and these related conditions for a long time, avoided surgery as long as I could. And I was actually, in my private practice, and I had a practice of about half adults and half children and families. And I started leaving my office every day just crying with the level of pain I was containing to get through a day. And like with kids, I would do sand play and puppets and drawing. And the pain was so just, it was pretty significant that I started to dread when I would have a child client come in because
Oh.
I was so active with them, and that just broke my heart. With the adults, I could sit and I could put on heat and sit against back cushions and zone in on the therapy, but it was different with kids. So I ended up learning after years of talking to different surgeons, and most of them said, I'm not going near your spinal cord because you're very complicated and I don't recommend surgery. Until I found somebody who said this is what we'll do, and you'll get your mobility back and you'll be able to do what you want to do. And so my work was very important to me. And I said, okay, I can't really live like this anymore. I've done all the tricks and, different types of interventions, non-surgical. So I had the surgery, and then it turned out that I was in significantly more as complex as multi. And then I was in the worst pain of my life after the surgery. So it was
Mm.
months of just real difficult. So the surgeon did not take my complaints seriously, and I went to another surgeon who ended up taking it seriously and doing some imaging, so very specific type of imaging, and learned that the titanium plate that the original surgeon attached was dangling off my spine, and two screws were driven into the healthy vertebrae above my spine, above the surgery. So I had screws going into, so no wonder I couldn't take a breath without pain at that time. So I had a revision, and that was extremely complicated. Great surgeon, but that never actually really took. So I won't go into any more detail about that, but the aftermath of these surgeries caused something called complex regional pain syndrome, which is a neuro autoinflammatory condition. What I learned about myself is that the existing skills, the existing tools, and natural and learned self care practices, that I had to step those up so
Yeah.
much. It wasn't ever negotiable from that point on, right?
Mm.
I mean, like, to this day, it doesn't matter if I have a migraine because I get the neck compression, so it pushes up on the occipital nerve and I get migraines. It doesn't matter if I'm dealing with that or I'm in a hurry or what is going on. I will not skip yoga, and I never
Mm.
have since that, not one day.
So you do
And
yoga
people,
every day?
I I do. I
Yeah.
will not skip that. That's how I start my morning.
Mm.
So the self-regulating practices that I had, again, they were non-negotiable. Just
Mm.
I had to look at them in a different way because it's all, the pain is real and it's connected to the nervous system and how we respond to that. And while I kept um I kept working, I kept doing all these things that I could throughout my life. When I got to that point where after the surgeries, I mean the pain levels were so high, I had to stop working. I couldn't work for a while, so I had to give up my practice, and that was really really hard and painful. I started
Yeah.
seeing what people go through from a different from a different lens, from a more nuanced lens.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, thank you for being so honest and for sharing there. I mean, when we first chatted before we turned on the record button, you've got so much energy. You're so bubbly about everything, and mentioned resilience earlier. You've sure got a lot of that. So hats off to you for taking those self care practices and really nurturing you and finding out what helps you on that daily basis. So we've all got these little routines and these rituals, haven't we? But yours is so important to keep that ritual going. Was journaling a big part of that for you as a way of, because it's very emotional. As you were telling your story there, I could see you in your therapy room with the children or with the adults, and just holding that space is very energetically very tiring as well. And when you've got this physical pain, I can't imagine really what you were going through. So very, very resilient, very tough. But yeah, what part did writing play in you there?
I you know, writing, I think I've heard a lot of people say that it saved my life, and some people hear that and think it sounds it sounds dramatic, or I really believe, I know it's sustaining, that's for sure. That are the things that, I mean, it was a go-to, right? It's always been my medicine. When the surgeries happened in my 40s, it became my medicine, right? Maybe I didn't frame it that way before, but that was and continues to be. I cannot. The reason I say saving, Anna, is because I really cannot imagine living my life and having gotten through those difficult times, even the typical adolescent stuff, right? That angst that we all go through. But these very, very traumatic moments like post surgery and diagnoses and all of these things that happen for us without having writing. I cannot
Yeah.
imagine it. And so yes, I turned to that. And something really interesting is at one point I found myself saying, I wish I would have written more when I was in the throes of this. I just, gosh, I wish I would have written more about the specifics and all of that. And I look back and I wrote so much. I journaled so much more than I remember journaling. And that's very typical of me. You talk about shoulds, right? I can get judgmental, self judgmental sometimes and go, I haven't written enough, or I'm not giving enough time or space to that. And then I'll go on a little hunt, a reality check hunt, and I'll flip through my journals and I do these voice dictation when my hands don't work, and I'll look on my computer, and all of that says to me, what are you talking about? You
Yeah.
have given yourself this space to write. And so what that I guess it tells me or reinforces is that when I'm journaling, I'm so completely present,
Yes.
and you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then so it's not like this, it's something's channeling through. I'm open. I'm in that moment of self-regulation or working toward that through the writing, and I'm breathing differently and I'm holding my body differently, and I'm bringing in new perspectives and all the amazing things that can happen from the journal, the process, and then I move on. And then I
Yeah.
do it again, and then I move on. But I just still find it fascinating that I never think I journal as much as I do. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
How about you? Do you find that?
I think you're absolutely right. It's when you're in that flow and you're completely present. And one of the elements of that is that, that there is no time anymore because we're just so
Yeah,
involved in what it is that we're doing. Whereas I think when we're working on something or we're doing something else that's a little bit draining, we're not in flow
yeah,
quite as much. I've
yeah,
been working on a
yeah.
project today actually that I've felt a little bit, can't wait till this finishes. But I think because I haven't been in that flow with it, I haven't been connected to it as much as when I'm writing or being out in nature as well on a walk, that the time always goes really fast for me in those kind of environments as well. That yeah, I think we lose ourselves in the moment, but all for the good reasons, for the positive reasons. Whereas
Right.
we remember more of the tiring times or the negative times. So yeah,
Right.
I think you're
Right.
just
And
so completely involved in it.
exactly. Exactly. And I think you're asking about the what happened that time and what the role journaling played in my life. Something that really came from it is I remember this pivotal moment, and it was during this very difficult time and that I was talking about, and I was reading memoirs, and here, I read a lot of nonfiction like you do, and hearing people talk about um a lot of nonfiction is this narrative of I'm sorry, a lot of memoir is this narrative of I was here and then I got to here, right? I
Mm.
was in this bad, dark place, and then sky broke open, and and opera voices started singing, right? And and then that narrative a lot of times is so many times is took things for granted or I didn't notice things, right? And I really honestly I struggled with that. I was like, well, what's going to be my narrative from this medical crisis? Honestly, and I don't say this as a point of I'm careful about how I say it because I don't want it to sound like a point of, complete self-actualization or boasting, but I really have always been since I was very, very young, just somebody who does take in the world. I will stop in the middle of something and go, "Oh my god," and be in moments of awe, and I thank
Yeah.
God for that, right? That's how I was born, okay?
Mm.
So I thought, well, I don't know. I mean, what am I what's my story? What am I gonna get from this, right? Whatever aside from I knew I was gonna use it to teach, to help other people,
Mm.
right? Because that's what I've always done. But what I realized is through journaling, um, and I can picture myself in that moment, um, is that the pain and it was not gonna take away my essence. Wasn't because it can rob people, it can take there are so many losses inherent in the experience of, acquired disability or acquired chronic pain or illness, and the losses are really significant, different for everybody. But at the same time, what I realized is that it can take away my driving. I can't drive because of my neck, so I couldn't drive from the time I was in my mid 40s.
Mm.
Income, this and that. Identity is a whole other piece, how
Yeah.
we relate to our work and all of that. That's what I came to is it's not going to take away my essence. Like you mentioned, bubbly, like vibrancy is it's just you should, I can look at pictures when I'm 2 years old. They're the same pictures that I take now with my leaning into the person next to me. And it's just who I was and who I am. And my God, this pain is not going to take my essence. And so that's
Mm.
something I think that journaling that from the head out into the paper can give us those moments of aha realization. What the meaning, harvesting me, that's the meaning, right? What is
Mm.
what is the meaning of this?
Mm.
Authentically, not what I hear people say, not what we think we should say, right? But truly what's that about? And so that's been my trajectory is maintaining who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm.
And you teach now over Zoom, don't you? So your courses, your workshops are international. People can join them from wherever.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
teach. So is that part of that thread that flows through the workshop? Maintaining that essence and showing people because there's nothing better than coming from experience. From what you've
Yeah.
been through, and then turning that into something tangible that other people can learn from, and creating that safe space for people. So yeah, do you want to describe a little bit about your workshops and how people can join, who it's for?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So, I created as part of my training in therapeutic writing, I created a 6-week curriculum workshop called Pain Meets Pen quieting chronic pain with therapeutic writing. And this is, like you said, your baby. This is my baby. This is my project. This is really a lifelong, a culmination of everything that I've known with my professional experience, because I've always worked with folks with chronic pain, illness, disability. I've cared for people in family, and I, of course, have the lived experience. So from those different positionalities combined with my lifelong practice, I said, well, what else would I do? All right, well, let's do this. So I developed this program, and we gather on Zoom, have people from all over different parts of the world. And each workshop, it's 6 weeks, 2 hours per week. And I guide people through some beautiful, lovely therapeutic writing, journaling exercises. I notice in this moment I'm trying to think of how to summarize it, because there's so much investment in how I feel about this,
Mm.
and the meaning it has for me,
But
both
you can
for
tell because you've lit up.
yeah.
I mean,
Oh, have I lit up?
you've been quite lit up throughout the entire
Oh,
conversation so far. But
mm,
yeah, you can tell that it means a lot to you. You know, it's sort of
mhm.
your life's work, your purpose.
Oh, thank you. That's like your the title of your podcast. Yeah,
Yes.
writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, writing with purpose. So gathering with purpose. So so I chose the term quieting for many reasons. And one is that, at least in the US, we are a very fix it society, right? Get over this, and then we have all these cures and fixes, and then you'll be okay, right? Then you can move on with your life. But as you've heard from a snippet of my story, that's not always the truth, right?
Mm.
For people with, I mean, there are a lot of reasons that people have chronic pain or illness, and there are genetics, there are surgeries gone wrong, there are accidents, there's aging. And um, so this I developed as a way of helping people to improve their relationships and enhance them with the body, with the pain or illness, in a way that they haven't before. And what happens when we're going through something like this, some kind of medical condition that impacts our daily life in some way, our activities, our functioning, is that we naturally distance from our body, right? Isn't that the most human thing to do? You're causing me trouble here,
Mm.
right? You're bumming me out. I'm not happy with you, right? A lot of people use the term my body betrayed me. That's
Mm.
very commonly heard. And so what do we do with people, right? If you think of the body as a person, what do we do with people who betray us? We hold anger toward them. We distance them, right? We do what we need to tolerate them if we're in community with them, or whatever it is, right? But then what are the effects of that? Then
Mm.
we can increase our pain, then we can increase our symptoms, and we can exacerbate what's already existing and do the opposite of what needs to happen, which is to self regulate. So the quieting is around reuniting with the body in a different
Mm.
way. And something that folks are always told when they go to, I hesitate to use the word always for anything, but it's very common, I should say, are told when they go to medical providers or any kind of wellness provider, is listen to your body, listen to
Mm.
your body. What does that mean,
Yeah.
right? Other
Where
than,
would
okay,
you
I'm
start?
tired.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. And the answer is that it means something deeply personal
Mm.
to each person. That we're told, live with this, learn how to live with the I was literally told, you just learn to live with it. This
Mm.
pain, that's okay. What
Yeah.
so
Very matter of
because
fact, isn't it? That well, you
yeah,
just got to live with it. There's not that you mentioned before about we deal with it, get over it, and then you can
yeah,
move forward. Whereas it's a case of
exactly.
having to
Yeah.
live with it. But yeah, it's not as that. It's not that matter of fact at all.
It's not. So how do you live with such, it's like having a roommate in a studio apartment, right? With
Yeah.
somebody that you're at odds with. How on earth do you live with to learn to live with that? So the quieting then is and the writing process in the workshops is a practice of deep listening and doing that in a way, and it's all very guided, it's all gentle, it's like this gentle return back to your body in a new way, right?
Yeah.
Through the embodied practice of writing. And so quieting and listening to these parts of ourselves that we've pushed away and that, like I was saying in my dream, right? That really that need a voice and need to be heard. And instead of suppressed and pushed away, thinking of it like a child, like you wouldn't do that with a child, you wouldn't push them away. Well, this
Mm.
your body and your body parts and your mind and your emotion, they all need honor and care and appreciation. So we do some really creative writing exercises where people can externalize what they're experiencing on the inside and take a step back from it.
Yeah.
Maybe write from the body's perspective. If somebody has a broken arm, for example, as example, what is the arm? What is my
Mm.
arm saying to me? And really stepping away and getting talking about this. I'm thinking about one of the things I love so much about journaling is that it at the same time you're distancing yourself, right?
Mm.
You're the relationship is such that you are safe to move into the material, whatever that material might be at the moment, and externalize it, look at it, write it down, move into it more safely. And at the same time, you're getting closer to yourself,
Yeah.
right? I,
Yeah.
I I just
Yeah.
I just find that fascinating and extraordinary that we can actually get to that same, like, 2 different roads converging and just get to that same place by
Mm.
distancing and coming close.
It's like
Yeah.
two polar opposites almost. You're creating that distance, but by creating that distance, you're actually making that connection a lot stronger and you're becoming closer to your body, to yourself, yourselves. Yeah, I was going to ask you, I mean, I was going to ask you if you use that perspectives technique and, having a
Oh,
dialogue
yeah.
with different parts of your body and, whatever the pain or the illness or the condition might be. I can see how that's really powerful for people.
It is, and it's a and dialogues are more I think you talked with Kay about the journal ladder and how the
Mm.
dialogue is one of the upper rungs where very intuitive, and so I don't dive into that with folks. I do that later on in the 6 weeks after we've done some other types of writing, and then folks have a choice around that, if
Mm.
they feel like they wanna 'cause dialogues, they can go really deep. I
Yeah,
always think of
taking people on
dialogues
that
as
journey so that when
yeah.
they might be ready at that stage to take on something a little bit deeper.
Yeah, because they can be so I think they're extraordinary. I do a lot of them. I love hanging out in that realm and I always tell people give yourself a lot of self-care space, take a walk, go in nature, do something after because I always feel like a dialogue can produce another dialogue. Oh, you should talk to this part of you and you should talk to this part and
Yeah.
let's have these two meet, right? It can be never ending. We can spend our lives, in the journal writing dialogues.
Yeah.
But we gotta eat and do laundry.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
the timer is on and you limited yourself to a certain amount of time, it's never enough time. So what I could still
right,
ask
yeah,
another question or I could still go down
exactly.
this angle.
Yeah,
As you were talking there, Elisa, it reminded
mhm,
me of because you referred to having two marriages in your life, one to your wife and then one to your
mhm.
writing as well. And as you
Oh,
were talking about the workshops there and the development of that, I could almost because one of the questions was I was going to ask you was, can you see, other marriages in life, and I think there's that one with yourself as well, so with the
mhm,
writing with yourself too, and one with your body that we can use that almost as a metaphor for a lot of other aspects, and writing almost intertwines all of those together.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the journal is the place where we can be unfiltered,
Mm.
right? And when we're in relationship with other people, it's a positive thing. We are conscious about how how we might come across, what other people might be holding, and how what we say might affect them, right? I mean, there are some people that don't seem to have been born with a filter, but that's another story. But in general, right? Most of us generally we care about how other people think. So the journal is a place that we can be our most raw, truthful, unfiltered selves. And I think that's that again, like how do you live without expressing
Yeah.
these parts of yourself? I don't know how. So
Mm,
that's why I turn to the journal. And I think why I always call it I think of it as a really, really sacred relationship. Like
mm.
you are there throughout all of the pain and the not so pretty parts of me and things I might feel embarrassed about saying out loud to somebody. And then it also gives us, a way to to process through bringing information to other people. Like, how do I want to say this to that person?
Yeah.
So many uses of it. But I appreciate your question because I really do feel like it's a relationship to honor.
Yeah, you're
uh,
right. There's lots of different ways
uh,
to be able to use it. I think one of the important things is to come to that page or the dictaphone, whatever, however it is that you're
yeah,
transcribing that message that
yeah,
needs to come out. It's just be honest and vulnerable, and there's no judgment there whatsoever. And just to be able to use that, because otherwise we get stuck in our heads, don't we? And thinking, and we get stuck in this rational and logical, well, irrational sometimes if we don't release that emotion that we get wrapped up in.
right.
But
And
yeah, I think it's important that we don't hold everything inside
mhm,
in our heads that
mhm,
then comes out in our body as well, because quite often it
exactly.
is said that pain in the body is trapped emotions, isn't it? From whenever it could be past trauma, or there's that theory as
It
well. So
could be. It could be. And absolutely there's research on that. And I think where my work is to confront the biases. So the black and white thinking. Like I'm teaching a course at at the Therapeutic Writing Institute right now, and I teach continuing education to therapists. So this is mostly a group of therapists, and I'm having them explore what their biases are. So I'm having them
mm,
look through their journals and their writing and what they've done, and so that they can more effectively, more ethically work with clients who have chronic pain or illness and see where those locked sort of fixed notions are. So it's a yes and. So while there's absolute the research connection to pain and trauma, and there are circumstances like I mentioned, there are genetics, there are
yeah,
things that happen for reasons we don't really some don't have reasons etiology attached to them. And the understanding, while there's so much goodness in this understanding of connecting past traumas and the nervous system and all of that to pain, pain is still very poorly understood in
mm,
general. And practitioners, at least here in the US, get very little training on what chronic pain is. So that's a longer response to yes, that absolutely we hold traumas and we hold pain, and the body speaks. And this is partly why we do this in the workshops, why we listen to what the body is saying
mm,
and what the body is holding. So even those whose pain maybe isn't from related to past trauma at all, what's the connection with nervous system, right, regulation, and how can the body give through writing, how can the body give more information about what's happening than maybe the brain
yeah,
can, letting all that
yeah.
come forth in the journal. Yeah.
Yes, definitely the leaning in, that listening and quietening that you mentioned, because otherwise the chatter in the head can be too much that we can't hear the body.
Right, and we can't hear the body, and we internalize some of the biases and stigma that exists. Like I said
Mm,
before, that we're in a fix-it society here in the US. So then people come to the workshops, and whether they say this directly or not, it comes through that there's so much you mentioned there's so much self-judgment. There's so much self-judgment and a lot of that it's not just the experience within the individual, whether it's a trauma history or solely medical, um, well, it's never solely medical. We're connected,
Too
right?
complex. Yeah.
Too complex to say that. Yeah, yeah, but it provides a space for unpeeling all those layers.
Yeah,
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 for sure.
yeah.
There is, when we're talking about your body and quietening and listening, I have to come to you, ask you about using the bathtub as part of your writing practice. So, yeah, as I understand it, you often write or you have written while submerged in the bathtub, belting out
Uh-huh.
70s music as well.
You're getting into my dreams. You love it.
Yeah, I just find that fascinating because there is
Yeah,
something very, very embodied about that practice. What is it
yeah.
about water that creates those conditions for you? You know, for the word for those word for those words to
You
flow,
know,
the flow of water and then the flow of words.
yeah, the flow, exactly. I mean, we are mostly water, right? We're made up of water. There's something about the purity, and I almost think, without getting too far off into speculation, there's something about the womb and the talk about flow and the fluidity and and all of that and that safety and I think it's attached to very, very early beginnings there. I
Mm.
haven't researched this, I haven't looked into it, but you're lighting up centers in my brain that say, "Get on Google this afternoon." What is it about water? I just know that it's first of all, there's intention, right? There's that intention of we don't go into a bathtub and hopefully, I mean, maybe folks work through cognitive issues in the bathtub. I'm sure a lot of people do, but generally to relax, right?
Yeah.
To completely submerge and let go of what the day, right?
Mm.
Right? Or let go of something we're holding. But there is you just said it, it's flow. It's this movement in this way. You know, one of the only I actually the only I can say this clearly that the only place I ever feel nearly an absence of pain is in when I'm in a swimming pool and I'm completely submerged in water.
Mm.
The bathtub is different because for me, it's the combination of the submersion and the movement. I'm thinking as I'm talking, I'm thinking about like the movement of the pen on paper, that embodied experience. And so the embodiment of being in the water and moving. So I have a very positive association with water and what that means for my body. And then I think it's also going back to that intention to relax. First of all, there's just so much agency in doing that. And in being and having a very small part of my day where there's no expectation of of output of performing, it opens up channels. It
Mm.
opens up channels and I don't go in and say, "Oh, I'm gonna write. I'm gonna see what comes to me." It's more it's more an opening. It's just like, you know, "Hey, I'm here. I'm here. I'm in water. I'm in the most natural state you could be in, and I don't have any expectations." And things come and come and come. And I found these little notebooks that are for hikers, or I think people who work in the field outside. And you can write in pencil on the little notebooks, and it stays. Like you can drop it in
Mm.
water, and it's still,
Yeah. So it's a
you know what I'm talking about?
waterproof. Yeah,
Waterproof.
waterproof.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Right, that's the word, waterproof, notebooks. So, I keep a waterproof notebook and pencil there, and I jot down and so that will be often, fodder for my journaling or for a piece of writing I wanna, put out in the world. But the journaling is more in the water is more in my head. I'm processing a lot, and then I can get out, and it just, like you said, flow again, it
Yeah.
flows.
It's
Yeah.
a great example of creating that nice little safe,
Mm,
nurturing, relaxing ritual for the words to
yeah.
flow. Yeah, and I mean, water itself, I always find is very, very you're drawn to water. It's a real energetic source, probably, as you say, because we're about 80% water anyway, aren't we? Cold water and wild water swimming's very good for mental health as
Yeah.
well, just having that dip. But I do like a nice hot bubble
Mm,
bath. Some
yeah.
salts in there, yeah, it does help me to relax
Oh,
a
the
lot.
hotter the better. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned
Yeah.
there about it, the bath, that being an opening for you, which you've mentioned a couple of times as well. So if I could just
Yeah.
lead on there, because you've
Yeah.
mentioned in one of your write-ups online, I forget where it was now, maybe Word Gathering, the Journal of Disability, Poetry and Literature. You mentioned about there's been an oak tree in your yard that is visible from the window when you write. So I wondered, is that another opening for you in nature or the elements of nature in general? Do you find that they offer those openings for you when you're ready to write?
Looking at our oak tree right now.
Mm,
Yes, 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 so much. I mean, nature has always been very important to me. I mean, connected to water. I grew up in Arizona, hot Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. So we, as kids, we were in outdoors, but in the pool all the time. So I had that nature with whatever is surrounding and being in the water. So there's a very strong connection to nature in that way. I also grew up going to summer camp in beautiful Sedona. I don't know if you've heard of
not
Sedona, but it's a
familiar.
gorgeous. So Phoenix is in southern Arizona, and then Sedona is in northern Arizona. And if you can ever go, just take your journals and your writing and take a month and go on a retreat because that's surrounded by red rocks. The air is so crisp, and I just remember breathing there differently. And I've been back as an adult, but I spent summers going to summer camp near there, and so very visceral memories and
Mm,
connections with nature. And yeah, and so I smiled when you asked about that being I forget your words, but what I heard from it was an inspiration
mm,
for writing. Is that I feel like just walking outside is like books worth of writing prompts. It's just
yes,
like, right? I just
totally.
tell people when you're a kid and you're in the park and you go and pick up all the fallen leaves and look at this one and look at this one and that one and look at the shape of this and that. And I feel like that's what nature is. It's just like you cannot when you start to see it that way, you can't look out your window or step out the door without seeing metaphor
Mm,
and and prompts. So I
mhm.
tell people like gather. I just tell folks in my groups gather writing prompts outside in nature. Like you would if you were a kid.
Yeah,
Gathering little daisies or something. So yeah,
yeah.
nature is so important to me. Yeah.
Yeah, picking up acorns or a blade of grass or it's a
Yes.
strange shaped stone or something that's glinting in the sunshine. That yeah, there's writing material everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, open up any a book, any of Mary Oliver's books to
Mm,
any of her endless poetry, and there you go. How does this blade of grass, like you said, right? How does and she has a poem with blade of grass, right? What is this teaching me about life, about myself, and then just bring that into the journal. And we even do it on, I do some nature journaling workshops. We have a beautiful a forest here where I live in our small town, and it's a gorgeous space. And I do some writing workshops there outdoors, and so it's extraordinary. I mean, we touch the trees and we embody, all of the sensory experience and write and
mm,
read poetry, and it's just beautiful. But we also do that on Zoom. There's pictures, or there's let's move away from the computer and step outside if you can and hit nature, and then come back and do a writing prompt connected to nature. So I integrate that into my work a lot because it's just for all the reasons all the reasons that we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very rich in being able to give us the prompts and yeah, just go and stand outside, look up in the sky, listen with your ears, hear the birds. There's so much sensory richness there.
Yeah, and they've done studies for folks in hospitals following surgery, and I don't remember the specifics, but what I do know is that one group of folks they were coming from surgery without a window view of
Mhm.
nature, and another set of folks with a view of nature, and you can predict what would happen. The people who had a view of nature, they needed less pain medications, they
Mm.
recovered more quickly. I mean, isn't that
Yeah,
fascinating? I mean,
yeah.
the physical, mental, emotional health benefits of
Mm.
nature, and so then combine that with journaling, ah, you know,
There you
there's
go.
endless
Exactly.
endless
Yeah, 2
possibilities.
yeah, 2 very powerful elements there coming together to,
Yeah.
yeah, just gain even more benefits, definitely. So, what's one thing, Elisa, that you would want your listeners to know about writing as a healing practice? Something that might give them permission to pick up a pen today, regardless of what they're facing. So you mentioned it before, we do hold a lot of things. We don't always treat ourselves with kindness. And I think sometimes it is giving ourselves that permission just to write freely, to be honest, to give ourselves that time that is about us.
So permission, I think I think that's one of the most important words there is permission without the expectation of
Yeah.
what you think writing means or what you read that writing means or what people are posting on social media. Look what I did and look what I
Yeah.
right. And just I would say enter it with a lot of times I'll do some guided imagery. So I'd say, and the mind is so powerful. There are studies about how actually imagining something, it changes the brain in the same way as if we have actually practiced doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So I tell people I used to love to dance when my body could dance. And I tell people my body doesn't know, like, my mind rather, my brain does not know about my spinal cord, or anything else going on. My body thinks I'm a Broadway dancer because I am constantly dancing. I'm always dancing in my imagination. And I didn't know this before until I started studying neuroscience, and now I know that there's a reason I have been doing that all along, and one of the coping mechanisms, I didn't think of it as a coping mechanism, but I'm lighting up the same centers of my brain as if I were actually dancing in my living room or on Broadway.
Yeah.
um, so I'd say use your imagination, um, to go to a place, and especially for folks with chronic pain or illness who cannot actually physically get to a place in nature,
Mm.
right? Or that really lean into the imagination and either listen to, there's so much out there, podcasts and
Yeah.
um YouTube's, and apps that have healing sounds of nature, or guided imagery, and take a few minutes before writing. So, and even if it's okay, there's about 100 birds out my window right now. Just, oh my God. Yeah. So
They're hearing you. They're coming at the right moment. They know what you're
they
saying.
are. They're like, "When's next? When's the next group? That's when's the next workshop?" But to center, to quiet, just to practice quieting, and that could be 2 minutes. It could be 5 minutes. But just to close your eyes, let yourself go. If you can't get out to sit against a tree, or you can't get, sit up looking out at the ocean, do it in your mind, and don't undervalue the actual benefits, health benefits of that, and notice your breath and notice how you can have some agency in that moment, right? And I'd say I invite open yourself to images. What is floating by? What is happening? What is just like what's kind of floating in front of you and then going off like a train leaving in the distance, and then what sticks, what shapes are there, what colors are there, what's the feeling, and all the sensory. Are you smelling something in that image? It can be just as simple as a sensory practice, right?
Mm.
Taking a few minutes to that, and then just bring it to the page. You
Yeah.
don't have to create a Mary Oliver poem, right? None
Mm.
of us can do, can do that. But bring it to the page and see and let what's in your mind come out on paper, and have a space, and go from there and see what your body wants to write, and then use one of the many journaling techniques that um, that you want to write, or just leave it at that and just bring it out there. I use a lot of art and collage in my workshops too.
Mm.
So from a very intuitive place, it's just that's another. I mean, again, this is an 8-hour talk, but the techniques, but really flip through magazines, even catalogs that come in the mail, and try to edit that thinking brain and that judgment part of us, and just intuitively, like, what am I drawn to here?
Mm.
And the important piece is, don't worry if you don't know. It doesn't have to make sense, because when you gather it and then put it down and step back and write and reflect on it, that's where the
Mm.
juice comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very powerful techniques there. And yeah, you might not
Yeah.
get meaning from something in the moment. You might not even get it in the same day or the same week, but at some point you might start to notice patterns. You might start to,
Yeah.
see the same perhaps word or
Yeah.
situation, or, you
Yeah.
mentioned colours and
Exactly.
textures and things like that, jump out at you, and then the meaning starts to show itself.
Yes, and it's a valid journaling technique, right? If you feel like, "Oh, I have those experiences where, oh, I don't wanna write because somebody will see this," you can put all that together, and then again, like, little by little,
Mm.
write a sentence about what it means, or write a couple sentence and see what happens. With chronic conditions, one of the biggest pieces is that we need to give ourselves, our bodies, positive experiences.
Yeah.
And this is part of the quieting and part of the reuniting with our bodies in a brand new way, and resparking our relationship, right? And so if we have a positive experience of just tearing out pictures and putting them on our journal pages, and writing a word here and there, and doing anything like that, that my body did this. Like, my
Yeah.
arms tore, my hands tore this. I would say tear it so you don't cut it, so it's not that precise part of us, but
Mm.
more free flowing
Yeah.
part of
So
us.
it's a
And you can do,
little bit more, yeah, I know what you're saying with
you
that.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
either is fine. Either way is fine, but I like the tearing for that reason, but just yeah, and you can write about that. My eyes went to this picture, and then my fingers touched it, and then my elbow, like, went like this and tore it, and then I felt the glue on the edge of my there's so many ways we can, relate and connect with our bodies that we don't think about, so continuing to give ourselves those positive experiences, and learn what information our bodies have is so powerful, so powerful.
Yeah, yeah, you've explained a lot there about how we can approach writing, but from the whole body, and not just this thought of,
Right.
get stuff out of our heads. It's a whole experience, the process, just the process of how you were describing there, getting an image and tearing it. You can feel
Yeah.
that, can't you?
Yeah.
And that stretch at the same time when you're
Yeah.
doing it. So there's so much
Exactly.
there. Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I could ask you so many more questions. I think we probably need to draw it to a little bit of a close. Yeah,
Yeah.
how can listeners find out more? What's the best place for them to connect with you, for your workshops, and also some of your other materials, and because you're writing a book as well, I believe. So
I
yeah,
am.
tell us how we can find out more.
So my website is inktoinsight.com, and very low volume newsletter that you could subscribe to. Can reach out to me from there, connect to my email address. And yeah, and then there are workshops and classes, a lot on chronic pain and illness that I do regularly, the Pain Meets Pen. And then I do journaling with joy. I teach a class on life transitions, lots and lots of poetry. I'm doing a regular poetry group every 2 weeks, and it's been so lovely, and everybody wants to continue. And so
Good.
that's open for new people. And the book is another baby. It's I think of it as like it's my 20-year project that needs to be finally put out there. So
Yeah.
that's exciting. That's happening this year. Yeah.
Good. So you've got a lot on. It's one of those things, isn't it? When the time is right, when you feel
Yeah.
right, when it's ready to be released, it will be. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I'll share the links to your website and your email in the show notes as well, so people can connect with you. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I feel as though I've learned a lot, but got
Yeah.
some new ideas as well. And it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You have very good energy.
Oh, so do you. Thank you so much.
Thank
This has
you.
been a pleasure. I feel like I talked your ear off. It's the passion for what we do, and I was so excited to be a guest because I can hear this from your interviews and your own voice. It's like a culture of folks that have discovered the practice
Yeah.
of journaling. And yeah, and that even though it wasn't ingrained in you early on, you can learn it. You can learn it.
You can, definitely. And every conversation that I have, everybody's got a different approach or a different
Yeah.
technique, and there's no one way to fit that fits
Uh,
all. It's about experimenting and working with some of these techniques just to find, a way. It's a self-care practice, just like, yoga, like you take your yoga or breathing techniques and mindfulness. It's another way to be able to connect and express and gain relief and be in the moment and so many more. So yeah, I really
yeah.
appreciate you sharing your journey, your techniques, your workshops with us today. Thank you very much.
This is delightful. Thank you so much, Anna. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you'd like to continue your journaling journey with me, I hold in-person journaling circles across Staffordshire and Cheshire and a range of online workshops throughout the year. You're also warmly invited to join the Journaling Nook, my online monthly membership for £25. This includes 2 live journaling circles per month, weekly writing prompts and a monthly guest workshop. Visit writingwithpurpose.co.uk for details on all of these, including a free PDF journal planner download. All the details are also in the show notes. Thank you for listening to today's Writing with Purpose podcast. Having conversations with fellow writers or adventure enthusiasts brings 2 of my biggest loves in life together, writing and nature connection. I've been a copywriter and content creator for 23 years, but my passion is writing for well-being, and I'm on a mission to share the benefits that putting pen to paper has for personal wellness with as many people as possible. If you want to learn more about writing for your well-being and journaling techniques, please connect with me in my Facebook group, Journaling with Anna.